Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, "If the British march by land or by sea, from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower, as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be."
Ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk and to be up and to arm. Then he said, "Good night," and with muffled oar, silently rowed to the Charleston shore. Just as the moon rose over the bay, the summer-ship British man-o'-war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar, across the moon like a prison bar, and a big black hulk that was not confined by its own reflection in the tide.
Meanwhile his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears, till the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arm, the tramp of feet, the measured tread of the grenadiers, marching down to their boats on shore. Then he climbed the tower of the old North Church, by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread, to the belfry chamber overhead,
and startled the pigeons from their perch on the sombre rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade. Up by the trembling ladder, steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down. A moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath in the churchyard lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill.
wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear like centillions tread the watchful night wind as it went, creeping along from tent to tent and seeming to whisper all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of a lonely belfry and the dead. For suddenly all his thoughts are bent on shadowy something far away.
Where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride on the opposite shore, walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now he gazed at the landscape far and near, then impetuous stamped the earth and turned and tightened his saddle gird.
But mostly watched with eager search at the belfry tower of the old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely, spectral, and somber and still. And lo, as he looks at the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He hops on his saddle and then brightly turns, until full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns.
A hurry of hooves in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles passing a spark, and struck up by a steed flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and the spark struck up by the steed in his flight. Kindled the lantern aflame with its heat, he has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath them tranquil, broad, and deep.
Is the mystic meeting the ocean tides, and under the alders that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of a steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down.
It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and the meeting-house windows, black and bare, gazed at him with a spectral glare. As if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon, it was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town.
He heard the bleating of the flock and the twitter of the birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadow brown, and one was safe and asleep in his bed, who at the bridge would be first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled.
As the farmers gave them ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane and crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, so through the night he spread his cry of alarm throughout every Middlesex village and farm.
A cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that should echo forevermore. For born on the night wind of the past, to all our history to the last. In the time of darkness and peril and need, the people will awaken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere.
In the beginning of the book, Longfellow starts by telling everybody to listen because he is going to tell about Paul's midnight ride. During Paul's midnight ride, him and his friend are trying to decide how to figure out whether the British were coming by land or by sea. They came by sea.
In this part of the poem, Paul Revere's friend sees the British leaving their barracks. So he climbs the old North Church and he waits to see where the British are going because Paul Revere is waiting for him to see if they're going by sea or by land.
Part of the poem, Longfellow talks about when Paul Revere's friend climbed the Old Moor Church tower and he stopped before he put up the lanterns to look down at the quiet churchyard in the city.
In this part of the poem, Paul's friend is in the belfry alone, and Longfellow has him looking down at the graveyard and describing it as a camp for the dead, and the wind there as a guard going from tent to tent to say to them all is well. And as he goes to light the lanterns, using lots of figurative language and descriptive, and describing the graveyard with lots of personification.
Part of the poem Longfellow, he describes Paul Revere as impatient because he's waiting for the belfry tower signal. His friend is gonna light a lantern, he's just so impatient, and Longfellow uses character to show how impatient Paul Revere is.
Part of the poem, Longfellow explains that Paul Revere is on the opposite shore waiting for his friend in the belfry arch to make the signal lights, and he sees one, and then he waits after he gets on his horse for the second one, and then the second one lights up.
In this part of the poem, Longfellow explains how Paul Revere is riding and warning the townspeople about the British soldiers.
As part of the poem, Longfellow uses the words "is the mystic," like "is the mystic river," and meeting the ocean tides, like the mystic river is meeting the ocean tides, and the alders are trees. Now, soft on the sand and loud on the ledge means the galloping was soft on the sand and then loud on the ledge, which was the rocky part. And then, now it was heard the tramp of the steed as he rides, was heard the running of his horse as he rides. And it was 12 by the village clock, meaning the time was 12 o'clock, when he crossed the bridge. And then he heard the crowing of a rooster, and then the barking of a dog, and then felt the damp of the river fog.
In this part of the poem, Longfellow was describing the mood of the night. He describes the eeriness and how Paul Revere must have felt while he was riding his horse. Longfellow uses personification in this part by saying, "In the meeting house windows, black and bare gaze at him with a spectral glare."
In this part of the poem, Longfellow emphasizes the day before the battle.
What's happening in my part of the poem is that after the British find out that the Minutemen and the colonists are ready to fight them, the British start retreating, and colonists are hiding in the woods waiting to ambush them. And that's what's happening in my part of the poem.
The poem, Longfellow wraps up the poem by telling how the people woke up to hear the warning about the British coming, so they knew to be ready. Longfellow uses amazing literacy elements to do this, such as mood and falling action.